Guys, so we're cruising along here about 60 mile per hour. We're just in third, not in drive, so we're about 2600 RPM. And I was just getting a feel for what the EGTs want to run. There's some rolling hills here, so we are just about 1,000 degrees running 60. We're coming up a hill here, so it's a little higher, and that kind of gives you an idea. One thing I'm really liking is it's about 80 degrees out and your intake air temps are only 20-25 above ambient. I get a lot hotter than that in my swaps with the smaller intercoolers. Being able to fit this full-size intercooler in here really helps. And I'm not sure, I'm thinking this must have a 160 degree thermostat in it. We didn't change it, but we're gonna go ahead and go back in and look at that, because you gotta really get on this thing to get it over 160. So it must be running that thermostat for whatever reason. But here, we're still at about 60, and you can see there we're 950 degrees. So I expected that with the little VNT 15. There's just really not a whole lot you can do to cool that guy down. But I know from my Jeep that I've ran it pretty much 1,000 to 1,200 indefinitely for a couple of years and never had an issue like that. So anyway, here we'll get up a little faster, run it up towards 3,000 RPM, and we're still cruising there just a little below 1,100 degrees. So that's about as good as I could expect. It's not going to be a highway cruiser without a bigger turbo for sure, but it's definitely doing it. All right, here we're coming up to this pretty big hill here through a pass, going about 65, about 10 pounds of boost. Well, it'll be more like 13 or 14 with the difference there, right about 1,000 or 3,000 RPM, and we're running just under 1,300 degree EGTs. So it isn't that bad. It's doing it. It just doesn't really get under 1,000 EGTs at all. But again, the intake air temps are just crazy low. There's hills like this that my other swaps would run well into the 150 to 160 degree ranges on hills like this. So having the RPMs down, or RPMs up higher, really helps with, I think, the intake air temps. Just not as much load because there's not as much boost. And here we're back to flatland, and we're right at 1,100 degree EGTs, still holding about 65. And I can show you here, if we pop it into drive, it still does it. It'll use pretty much the same amount of boost we did on that hill it uses to pull flatland, but we're running about 1,200 degree EGTs on flatland when we're down at 2,200 RPM, which again, that's really about exactly how my Jeep was. They just really need that 3,000 RPM up here at elevation. But it's definitely cruising around just fine. You can see I'm finally loading it up enough to get up some temperature, coolant temperature, but it's still not very, very warm. But again, here we're at 1,200, just crested a hill, and it'll drop back down. And so yeah, we're really cruising about 1,000 degrees on a stock turbo. That's pretty impressive, I think. So I don't know, but I don't, if you guys can kind of see here, it's just rolling hills with a little bit of wind. And I think it's a little over 80 degrees out now, so really can't complain at all. And it'll be pretty sweet to see what a bigger turbo will do on this thing. Another thing, we still haven't finished the intake on this, so sucking in this hot air can't be helping it much either. Although, like I said, the intake air temps are the lowest I've achieved thus far in any of my swaps, so it's still pretty cool to see it on the road. And we did go ahead and have my brother-in-law drive it for a couple weeks, and of course a lot of showing it off and doing some takeoffs and full throttle didn't help the mile per gallon average, but we put about 200 miles on it, with a mix of driving, probably mostly 50 mile an hour driving on the ranch, and then maybe a couple of trips to town at 65, 70. Especially in the morning, the EGTs are a lot lower when the air's a little cooler, so that definitely helps us out there. But anyway, all that to say, on that 200-mile trip, we clocked it at 22 miles a gallon, which I think is pretty amazing. With this thing, we weighed it at 4,800 pounds. That's a lot of weight to move. So yeah, we're overall really impressed. It's doing everything we wanted it to do. We of course would love to get the EGTs down, but that's just going to take more funding than he's got for the truck right now. So we are just going to run it like this for now and see how it does longevity wise, and just see what money he is able to put into it down the road. So thanks for watching, guys.